So this is my TED Talk. Yeah, it's a dual purpose for me. I have an ulterior reason for being here. I'm taking my last class for my curriculum endorsement, and it's an independent study, and they wanted me to speak to an authentic audience. You'll do. And also, I think in presentation form, and I'm trying to merge my thoughts. This is how I do it. So you're really just kind of an excuse for me to talk about this stuff. So my question for my class was making culture an integral part of schools, personalized learning, an integral part of school cultures. And as my investigation and Snelling talk, it's become my North Star. So Val and Bill, Rich always talk about the person doing the work does the learning. So I always think about that, and I talk to kid groups. And I always say, when were you really involved in your learning? And I always give the example of me building my treehouse. This is not the treehouse I built. But for me, it was a really personal journey in that I had to figure this all out. It was for my kids. My dogs spend more time in it. It looks more like this. But actually, it's somewhere between those two pictures. But that, for me, was owning my own learning. And so rarely do we let our kids own their own learning. So a little depth from Act 77. Act 77's given us some leverage around flexible pathways. But what I've noticed is a lot of schools are treating it as a technical change and not an adaptive change. They're just changing vocabulary to make it fit their needs instead of really making big transformative changes in their schools. It's kind of like this. Look we personalized Coke for you, right? It's all still the same. The bottles haven't changed at all. We just put somebody's name on that. So I've gone to Heath and Heath. They wrote this great book called Switch about how to make change when change is tough. And they talk about destination postcards. It's pretty clear to me that schools aren't clear about what the destination postcard is around personalized learning. And I also realize that it's not about personalized learning, it's about culture. And a lot of you have already talked about culture, be it family culture with VSAC, be it leadership culture. You've already talked about the importance of culture. And what I realized is culture is so important. We talk about strategy, I can do this, I can make this work. You can't. Culture is the secret, it's not strategy. Anthony Muhammad's written a book about culture, and he talks about climate is what you feel and culture is how you act. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but you think about that, it starts to resonate more. This is the best analogy I have. My attitude is my climate. I can change it like that. Someone can say something, my attitude can change. Personality is my culture. It is ingrained in me. It's not going to change unless there's a lot of work put into it. And we confuse climate and culture all the time. Another quote, book I'll show you in a minute. Culture is the box we think outside of. When we say something, think outside the box, we're really saying think outside your normal culture. And that's how we do things around here. That's culture. When someone tells you that's how we do things around here, they're talking about culture. Climate and culture. You see climate, but it's the roots that are the culture. Val, I'm thinking about to Snell, we always talked about values and beliefs. That's what defines your culture. I've worked with a lot of teachers. They know what to say. All students can learn. They're all our students. But you watch some of those practices, you know they don't believe those things. Because they're not thinking that all their students can learn in their actions. So back to Muhammad, climate is how we act, not how we talk. Okay, a lot of blah, blah, blah. This is from the AOE, describing flexible pathways. I think when they talk about systems and approaches, they're still talking about technical change. They're not talking about cultural change. This is from the Personalized Learning Foundation. Don't try to read it. But they're still talking about approaches. They are talking about a collaborative atmosphere, but they're not really digging deeply into it. They're thinking that you can just take a system and put it in place and it's going to happen. That's not true. We all know that's not true. A great example of a school going through school culture change. And I love this quote. But district leaders became concerned that students were more focused on completing academic tasks and on setting their own learning goals. They're understanding their culture. Kids were more interested in jumping through the hoops. If you've seen the movie Most Likely to Succeed, anybody? Most Likely to Succeed, Tony Wagner's a great movie, I'd recommend watching it. Group of kids sitting in front of a teacher and he says, would you rather have me teach you how to learn or teach how to ace the test. What did they say? Ace the test, because that's the hoop they have to jump through. That's a cultural description right there. So, my research for this class. I've done a series of future protocols. If you've never done a future protocol, you probably weren't, I don't know if all spelling groups do future protocols. It's a protocol where you ask folks to imagine a future. And they do it in the present tense. We do this, we do this. We have a culture that kids are moving from place to place. You describe a world in which there's a lot of personalized learning. Then you go backwards in time, back to 2016, and then you go describe the pathway. The real meat of that protocol is the path. How do we get to that future that we're trying to describe? So I did this future protocol with a group of students, 2 groups of students, a group of administrators. I did it with the AOE staff, and I did it with a group of educators from Tennessee who happened to walk in front of me one day. So it takes about an hour, and I've learned a lot from that future protocol. This is how I take all the little data, and I cut up all the facts, and I organize it. I try to find the themes from all the different groups. So Most Likely to Succeed is a great film. It's also a great book. But they talk about High Tech High. And High Tech High is a school that's got lots of personalized learning in it right now. So that was another piece of my research. I've watched this movie now 4 times. And each time I get a new aha out of it. Okay. So these are my, who is it? My aha, right? And that's tough for a 60s rock group. That's the Kinks. And these are the Kinks that are still getting in our way. Right? Yeah, okay. Right. Okay. This book was one of my big kind of mantras that I use, School Culture Rewired. If you're looking for an interesting book to talk about school culture, I recommend this book. But this was my big aha. We've talked about schools confuse climate and culture. They do a great job identifying their climate and working on their climate, but they're not attacking the roots of what's different in their buildings. And if they're not doing that, nothing's going to change. So climate and culture, my big aha. Another one. This happened, I was talking to some board members recently. And they're really talking about why our SBAC score is so low. They're talking about the 3 R's. And I'm talking about this new way of educating our students. I think they go hand in hand and they make each other be a better system. They think it does this. They think these 2 systems are at odds. If we change things too much, our students won't learn the basics anymore. And I'm learning that from teachers, and I'm hearing that from administrators, and I'm hearing that from board members. So we have to change that attitude. That's an aha, but it's also a kink. If people believe they're at odds, it's going to be very hard to change that culture. Silos. As long as we keep thinking about personalized learning being a silo, I can go down here, I can go to big picture, I can go to pathways at Mount Abe and get my personalized learning. They're never going to see it in your classrooms. So we have to take personalized learning and make it has to be everywhere in our culture, not somewhere where you go. I was at Mount Abe for 5 years. We had a personalized learning department, which meant it was a silo. That was a mistake. We should have spent a lot more time getting all the teachers to think about how they create that environment in their classrooms. So that was a big aha for me. George Washington, our leaders. Our leaders don't have a clear understanding of what it means to have a personalized learning environment. So they have to know their culture, and then they have to build a team. Too many of our leaders try to do all this work alone. It's not going to happen. So build teacher leaders, get your staff on board. That's really important. It's an aha and a kink. Talk to 11th graders. They think personalized learning means having more choices in classes. That's when I talked to both groups, that's all they came up with, how to personalize their learning. They didn't really think about it, so they don't have a clear postcard of what it could be. That's a really important fact. That's an aha. All right, the AOE. The AOE watched the movie with us, and we all gave some feedback. And here's what folks in the audience said. The AOE is saying, go do Act 77. But at the same time, they're telling us these things that contradict that. As long as SBAC is the holy grail, we're not going to get there. As long as 4-year graduation rate is the rule, we're not going to get there. And as long as licensing rules say you have to be siloed, we're going to be in trouble. So that came out of a group of big administrators talking about how they're at odds, AOE and Act 77. And the OE agrees with this. They're trying to make these changes. Okay, this is my big aha. It's not about personalization, it's about ownership. Who owns the learning in your building? If your teachers own the learning in your building, that's how it's always going to be. So if you want to make a cultural change, it's about handing that ownership over to the students. That's not an easy change. So as I keep working towards my North Star, this is my new statement right here, that we can do this if we hand ownership over to the people in our building who really matter, be it whatever. So that was my big ahas around personalized learning. Thank you.